driving, and she's falling asleep. She's kind of all over the road like she normally is. But Susan's in the back seat trying to sleep. And all of a sudden, Love Shack comes on the radio, and up pops his head, and Susan just starts belting out Love Shack. Roll down the windows, roll down the windows. So we're going through bypassing 90 near downtown Chicago, and she's screaming Love Shack at the top of her lungs. So there's a little background. Every time you hear the song Love Shack, you can think of coming back from Columbus, Ohio from a long day's production at WHHA for Love Shack. So with that, I'm going to come over here to Gary. I'm sure he's got something to say.
When I was approached to say a few things and quipping and teasing Susan a little bit, it was a little bit of a struggle. One of the problems I had is I've always looked upon Susan as being my kid sister in harness racing. We've been close forever. And so you forget things about family like that. And I had to struggle a little bit. A couple of things did come to mind. One of them was when I was president of the association and Susan was on the board. We'd get into a discussion and things would be going on. Oh yeah, hold it in my mouth. Talk about. And there'd be a discussion taking place, and after a while you'll learn, and I'm sure Gabe was at that stage, where you keep one eye on Susan, because you never know. And I'd be watching, and it wasn't too long, and her eyes would start to get bigger. And then you'd see her lean ahead in the chair a little bit, and if it was a real issue, her face would start to turn red, and it'd be like, oh no, here she goes. And I always came up with something worth listening to, but pointing. Oh, one other one. We got talking, I had some questions about things with horses in the paddock. Susan has done it all, and you know how sometimes you have a horse that refuses to clean out in the paddock? And that hinders the racing. Anyway, Susan and I are discussing this, and I asked, now you've been at it forever, have you got any thoughts on this? You know, what do you do when you have a horse that doesn't clean out? And she goes into this lengthy explanation of what she does, and I'm not going to get into it. I'll mention, though, that rubber glove would be appropriate. I think you said you used one, right? I'm not sure. Anyway, you can talk to her about it. She said it's a fail-safe method, works every time. A couple of comments in the other direction. Long ago, I gave her a title of Heart of Harness Racing in Wisconsin. That hasn't changed, obviously. And I think this recognition tonight is wonderful. And I think the number of people that are here tonight, the largest crowd we've had in a long, long time, is Susan. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. I was going to save this one to last, but since Gary mentioned it, Rick, do you have a story?
I have a couple. Speaking of the rubber glove, Starry Night Star, appreciate your helping hand.
All we'll say is Starry Night has one full for a reason. Anybody else have a nice story here that they want to tell about Susan?
I didn't get to know Susan really well until I started to race and started to hang out a little bit more after the races. And oh, then I turned 21 too. That helped. One time that comes to mind, and I've seen this look in your face a few times since then, but this was the first one. We were in Viroqua. Saturday night. Those of you who've been there, enough said, right? It's the last one. And we were hanging out, and everybody we thought we had our fun already, and it was kind of petering out. And Susan perked up and said, "What should we do? What should we do?" Because there was always something that went on there. And she looked at the starting gate and said, "Let's go get some toilet paper." So I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag because I don't know that this ever came up, but I think we're safe. But so we decorated the starting gate with some toilet paper, and like I said, I've seen that look a lot. And I missed it around the fairs this year, but I know you'll be around, so congratulations.
More volunteers. No, that's not enough, Susan. Anybody else that may have a story or something to share about Susan? Bob Yon probably has something. Well, Becky raised her hand, so then Bob can be after Becky.
One big thing, other than Susan is a great friend and we've been through a lot of things together, and we will continue to be through a lot of things together. But the part that is kind of maybe her own personal secret is that for a woman who knows her way around a racetrack, she gets lost a lot. Even with a GPS, because then she says she can get lost and find her way back. And we've had many great adventures because Susan has gotten us lost in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, and we've discovered many really cool things, but it always astonishes me, and somehow every time we go somewhere, we end up being lost, but yet we're found, so that's my secret thing about Susan that nobody else knows.
Anybody else? We can't let Susan off this easy. No, we can't. Jess? You gotta know a few stories without crying.
I'm not going to.
Right up front here, we got a table of Susan's family. Is any stories there you'd like to share? They don't have to be about racing, just something to embarrass her. No? Susan needs to defend the rubber glove stuff, so therefore we're going to Gretchen.
I spent one night at WHHA with Susan also, and good things only come from spending Saturday night at WHHA, as Mike said. And we shared a hotel room with Gabe, and well, there were four twin beds in this hotel room. Anyway, Gabe had left in the morning, and Susan always had good ideas. We didn't always execute them, but this was one of her good ideas. And she said, "Ooh, let's run out and throw a sheet around us and say, 'Goodbye, Gabe.'" And see what, as everyone else was leaving for breakfast across the street at the family restaurant. So she always had good ideas.
And where was this sheet at again? The things I miss out on. And remember, my family's here. Mike's gotten out. Anybody else that may have a story? Janice? No? Sure. Come on, Janice. Janice, well, nice, sir. You gotta come up here, though. I don't think the mic's gotten out back there. Come on up, Janice.
So I'll be brief. So I'm Janice Simmons, for those of you who haven't met, hello. A few years ago, Gabe bought a horse for me, my first horse that I owned. And it came to Elkhorn's barn, and Susan was going to be our trainer, and this was Windsong Erica. The horse came out, Susan and I look at the horse. It's got an ankle the size of a basketball. Gabe. But he told me it would be fine, and so Doc Stone came and scanned the horse and said, no, this horse is not going to race this season. And so my first horse, my excitement, there stands Susan and I in the barn, and I start to cry. I was so excited I started to cry. And my friend Susan cried with me. And I think that was our sad moment, our camaraderie. And Susan, over the next 18 months, trained that horse, worked with that horse, and last year we stood here